On About Books, we delve into the latest news about the publishing industry with interesting insider interviews with publishing industry experts. We'll also give you updates on current nonfiction authors and books, the latest book reviews, and we'll talk about the current nonfiction books featured on C-SPAN's Book TV. And now a focus on a more recent phenomenon that is having a major impact on book sales. New York Times books and publishing reporter Elizabeth Harris joins our program to talk about the social media phenomenon known as BookTok. So, Ms. Harris, when did BookTok get started, and exactly what is it?
So, BookTok, publishers started to notice BookTok probably about a year and a half ago, roughly. And BookTok is it's a hashtag within the platform TikTok, which is like traffics in very short videos, often people dancing or people cooking or people saying funny things or can be anything. And BookTok is people talking about books, and it can be videos of sort of individuals talking about books. It can just be sort of flashing a list of covers and that sort of thing. And publishers started noticing early last year that it was, people weren't just talking; they were buying the books they were hearing about, and it was starting to move a substantial number of copies, and has become a real sales force in the industry. And
so, how many views are some of these videos garnering?
Oh gosh, I mean, hundreds of thousands easily. It can really be huge. I mean, sometimes, it's very hit and miss, like a lot of social media. I mean, just because you tag something for BookTok doesn't mean it's going to go viral, but a lot of things really do. And there are also, there are subsections within BookTok. So there are sort of people who want to talk about romance novels. There are people who want to talk about nonfiction. There are people who want to talk about LGBTQIA. Like it can be very segmented. So sort of some segments are also bigger than others. So it varies a lot.
So Elizabeth Harris, did this grow organically? Can anyone hashtag BookTok put up a video?
It did grow organically, which is so interesting. I mean, publishers have been paying attention to social media for years and years. And YouTube used to sell a lot of books and still sells some. Publishers and readers are active on Instagram. They're what is it called? Bookstagram, I think. But nothing has ever sold books the way BookTok is doing, which is really interesting. And yeah, it's users. I mean, it's readers, basically. These are readers, and it started with mainly young people who were just talking to each other about books they loved. And they would, post videos of themselves like weeping, holding the book in their hand, being like, "This book destroyed me," and throw it across the room. And the post would go viral because, that's a big part of why people read, is they want to go on an emotional journey. And the videos on BookTok are really good about kind of very quickly and very specifically imparting exactly how you're going to feel when you read the book.
Have there been some breakout stars when it comes to these book reviews?
Oh, sure. I mean, the biggest is Colleen Hoover, who has been writing for years. She began as a self-published novelist and sort of started and kind of took off on her own. And then she really exploded during the pandemic, which was when BookTok was really taking off. She has sold 20 million books now. And it's not all TikTok, but that's been a lot of it. And I mean, it's amazing. You look at the fiction bestseller list on any week, and it's like half the Colleen Hoover list. It's really incredible. But there have also been one example I really like is Madeline Miller, who wrote The Song of Achilles, which is a love story about Achilles and Patroclus. It's very tragic, and it's a gay love story about there's war and people die, and like this is not an obvious this is not like an upbeat romantic comedy romance novel sort of thing. Like it's not necessarily an easy book, but it has sold, I don't actually know where it is now, but over 1 million copies. And I think its original print run was something like 20,000 books. It really took everyone by surprise, but it came out a couple of years ago, but just sort of took off again because of TikTok, and has sold incredibly well.
Well, we want to show an example. This is an example of a history book.
7 historical nonfiction books that Betty and I both love. Number 1, History of the World in 6 classes. This is my go-to, big scope of history. Devil in the White City is a crazy and true story, Chicago World's Fair, serial killer, classic book club book. If you want to have your mind blown and get a little philosophical, W.E.B. Du Bois' The Souls of Black Folk is beautiful and a work of art. If you don't have a lot of time on your hands, I recommend you just read one chapter of this a night, maybe to celebrate Pride Month. It's really great, short, digestible stories. Apparently Betty's not into biographies, but I am. Number 1, Genghis Khan and the Making of the Modern World, world history perspective, anti-Eurocentrism. Number 2, the biography of Augustus by Anthony Everett, stuck with me from grad school. Really amazing story. And last but certainly not least, it's got to be Eleanor. Happy reading.
So Elizabeth Harris, we're using Betty the Beagle to sell books.
I mean, who doesn't love a dog? That's brilliant, right? But I mean, TikTok, BookTok, also loves a list. When you give sort of very short snippet reviews of a couple of books, or just list a couple of books and say why you do or don't like them, or you put them in a category. A lot of those have done very well. I looked at TikTok this morning. There were, I got a couple books I would kill to be able to read again for the first time, things like that, or 6 books that will destroy you, or 6, I don't know, enemies to lovers books, things like that. So, that kind of fits into the same thing, where it's here's a list. If you're looking for a particular kind of thing, here's my thumbs up, thumbs down, and if you're looking for this, you want to try this. And they're very kind of specific, very quick, very user-friendly, reader-oriented.
So if you wanted to make a TikTok book review video, where would you start? How long would it be? Would it have to be a little bit edgy?
It doesn't have to be edgy. I would say it has to be short. You don't want to make it longer than, some of them are a minute or so long, but, 30 seconds is plenty often. One thing people have done to sort of game the system a little bit is part of the algorithm in TikTok works by using music. And if there is a music clip that's going viral and doing quite well, if you put that music in your video, that can help your video do better and get more views. So I might do something sneaky like that. But in terms of sort of edgy or not, I would say edgy is less important than emotional, because not all of them are emotional. Some of them are funny. Some of them are created by readers who have developed a following, and people kind of like their tastes, and they trust that they'll say, this book sucks if they think it sucks, and this book is great if they think it's great. But you don't have to have a lot of followers to go viral on TikTok. But yeah, I would say aiming for an emotional video, a book that made me cry or made me want to throw it against the wall, or if you have some sort of really strong reaction, those tend to do very well. Now, you mentioned that publishers have started to notice BookTok. Have they started putting up their own videos yet? They have, and mixed success. I spoke to somebody in a marketing department a couple of months ago about sort of how that was going, and she was saying that it's so unpredictable, and they'll kind of put a lot of thought into one video and try really hard, and it's nicely produced and whatever, and that kind of flops, and then they do a video that's kind of emotional, where they're like, "This book is amazing" for 7 seconds, and it does well, So I think they're still figuring it out, and I think an issue that's that comes up in a lot of social media marketing kind of questions for publishers in any company is the authenticity issue. People don't trust something they don't think is real. They are much more likely to take a book recommendation from another reader than they are from a publisher who obviously has a stake in how the book does. So that makes it trickier for publishers. So yeah, what takes off on TikTok is not something that publishers can control. They're sending review copies to readers and to people with lots of followers, and they're kind of trying to they're trying to promote those relationships, and some people are probably getting paid people are getting paid a certain amount of money, but it's difficult for publishers to really crack. So Elizabeth Harris of the New York Times, if you were an author, would you rather have a prestigious Kirkus starred review or a viral BookTok video review? If I wanted to sell books, yes. BookTok. BookTok. That would be my guess. I mean, reviews certainly help, but right now, BookTok, if something goes viral on BookTok, it can really explode. So nothing against Kirkus and nothing against reviews. I would love a great review too, but if I had to pick one, I would say on a pure sales basis, I would say TikTok at the moment.
Are there any other social media companies that are having the influence today that BookTok is?
No, that's an easy one. It's really incredible. I mean, there's, again, like YouTube has been a pretty interesting sales force for books over the years, Instagram. But it doesn't, again, back to the authenticity thing. Like on Instagram, it's like a beautiful stack of books, or it's a bookshelf where that's, lovely and color coded, and it has, the lighting is nice, and, or, it's sort of a beautiful picture of one book, like arranged just so on a couch next to a plant or something. Oh my gosh, my cat is going to knock over my plant. Speaking of plants, sorry. But it doesn't get to the emotion, and it's not as sort of quick and satisfying and pithy as, this book is great, this book is terrible. I love this book for this reason. You'll love this book for that reason. Here are 6 books you should read if you want to, like laugh until you cry, that sort of thing. Like it's not as emotional, and it's not as sort of punchy. So it's really a unique, it's got a unique level of power at this point.
Well, here's a nonfiction book that came out recently. The author did not do book events, but here's a review of his book we want to show.
Call me a martyr and masochist, but I read the first 6 chapters of Jared Kushner's new book, Breaking History, so you don't have to. It was painful. Jared Kushner has a God complex. He thinks that everything he touches turns to gold. And from the beginning, he shows moral blind spots as wide as the Grand Canyon. The book is written in an as-told-to style, a language about 7th grade level. What comes across loud and clear is that you're reading the book of a rich kid with no interior life and no introspective ability.
Elizabeth Harris, that's not going to help to sell books, is it?
I don't know. Is all news, is all attention good attention? But probably not. But I don't think, that has gotten a good number of views, but the people watching that, I don't think we're ever going to read that book. I think they kind of enjoy hearing someone say the book is bad. I think that's why they're watching it, not because they're looking for a recommendation. That would just be my guess.
When I grow up, I want to be an influencer. What is an influencer?
Oh gosh, what is an influencer? That's a great question. I guess in this case, it would be somebody who can, I guess a BookTok influencer would be somebody with a lot of followers who take their recommendations seriously and go out and buy the books.
Well, here's an influencer talking about university press books.
Full on, like not even humble brag, but now that I've become a pretty big nonfiction book influencer, university presses are reaching out to me to send me some books, and here's what I got from University of North Carolina Press, and it's incredible. White Evangelical Racism, The Politics of Morality in America by Anthea Butler. Hammer and Hoe, Alabama Communists During the Great Depression by Robin Kelly. White Balance, How Hollywood Shaped Colorblind Ideology and Undermined Civil Rights. The book that I feel guilty because I hadn't already purchased is Race for Profit, How Banks and the Real Estate Industry Undermine Black Home Ownership. And a book you just know I'm going to talk a lot about, From Asylum to Prison, Deinstitutionalization and the Rise of Mass Incarceration After 1945. The Male Chauvinist Pig, A History. I am so thankful for UNC Press for sending me these books. I am so excited to get to these. And if you want to see who was even more excited for this package, go check it out.
Elizabeth Harris, how does that sell books, just showing them, rather than talking about what's inside them?
Yeah, I mean, I think that reviewer has a lot of followers. So it's sort of, I think if that person had just posted that video as their first video, I don't think it would have done particularly well. But, once somebody has an established presence on BookTok, they have followers who trust them. and are interested in what they're reading, interested in what they like. I mean, that one is interesting because he hasn't even read them yet, right? He's just saying like, these are the books I have. But I think people are probably just curious at what he's, they're already curious about the guy. Like, I wonder if people will go out and buy those if he just says that they were sent to him, but maybe, I don't know. Or maybe people will be like, oh, those sound interesting. I'll put them on my list if they have similar tastes to his. And he says he's excited. But I'm not sure, it's very hard to draw like a straight line from like this video sells this many books. You can kind of see there have been maybe like one or two instances where I've, been able to figure out, okay, this was one of the first videos that really took off that pushed this book, but it's never precise. And I would not bet on it. But it's interesting, right? I mean, that's another sort of list format, right? Where it's just like, here's a book, here's a book, here's a book. And it's just, people also just like to talk about books, I mean, readers like to talk to other readers about what they're reading. Like people who just really enjoy reading and read a lot, the sort of super readers, just like to talk about it. And I mean, the thing that BookTok really does is it sort of supercharges word of mouth, which has always been really the holy grail in book sales, getting someone to tell their friend that they like a book is like, that's what you want. You want a talker. You want a book that people are going to be chatting with their friends about. And, BookTok allows people all over the country, all over the world to find like-minded people who like similar kinds of books. And so rather than just like talking to the people they know, they can talk to thousands of people they don't know at all. And it allows these sort of communities of, almost like mini book clubs in a way, but like sort of these recommendation communities to sort of form organically on their own based on what people are interested in.
Now, I should have asked this question at the beginning, a kind of a fundamental question. Are BookTok TikTok videos limited in length? Can you do 10 minutes if you wanted?
Oh gosh, I don't know the answer to that question because I've never seen one that's 10 minutes. I think that the successful ones are short. I think TikTok does have a limit on the videos, but to be honest, I don't know the number off my top of my head.
Is Amazon connected with this? Have they been linking at all these BookTok videos to their sellers pages?
I don't know, to be honest. I haven't noticed that, but I don't know the answer, to be frank.
Well, we want to show one more BookTok video. This is about rediscovering the classics.
Are these classics worth the read? Part 1. Absolutely. It just gets better and better every time. A yes from me, there's so much to unpack. No found it too bizarre and not funny. Yes, Gatsby and Daisy's love story hurts to even think about. No a verified snooze fest.
So Tom Sawyer is a verified snooze fest on that one, and Little Women is worth rereading.
Apparently. That's a really interesting one. That speaks to a couple of things. Again, there's the list, there's the recommendation format, right? That people, kind of want a thumbs up, thumbs down, and just like a really quick why it's good or why it's bad. And it also speaks to something that's very interesting. So in book sales, usually, if a book is ever going to sell well, and most books don't, sadly, it's right out of the gate. But BookTok highlights books that came out a couple of years ago often, a lot of books that are out in paperback now, they don't have to be new, or they can be classics. Like I was sort of surprised and sort of tickled when I learned that there are some classics that have really done well on the platform. And, people just want a good book. They don't really care when it came out or, who's pushing it or what. They just want a good read.
Elizabeth Harris, I want to ask you about a few other issues. Where are we when it comes to audiobooks? How many are being listened to? Is it a growing format still?
Yeah, it is. It's become a substantial part of book sales. Print books, interestingly, still account for the vast majority of sales for publishers. The industry hasn't been disrupted the way, say, newspapers have, where kind of the print versus digital shift has been really enormous. For books, print is still very strong. But audiobooks have grown, and they grew during the pandemic, and they were growing before, and they're doing quite well. I mean, and it's also from a publisher's perspective, it's it's a nice area because they don't have to ship the books. Books are heavy; you have to print them, that kind of thing. You don't have to do that. So audiobooks are quite important to publishers, and probably will only continue to be more so.
Well, earlier in this program, we noted the passing of Hilary Mantel, and as a Booker Prize Award winner in England. National Book Awards are coming up. Do these tags and do these awards help sell books?
They do. They can, they don't always, but they really can change. They really can change things for an author. There are a good number of people who read based on award winners, who read based on kind of 10 best lists from places like the New York Times, things like that. People like guidance. There's a ton to read every year, and so a stamp like a National Book Award winner can really be helpful significantly.
Elizabeth Harris covers books and the publishing industry for the New York Times. We appreciate your time on About Books.
Thanks for having me.
Thanks for joining us for About Books, a program and podcast produced by C-SPAN's Book TV. Book TV will continue to bring you publishing news and author events, and you can get this podcast and all the C-SPAN podcasts on our C-SPAN Now app. You can also watch all our programs online at booktv.org.